I believe there was a lot of music in your house growing up.
Yeah, my mom and dad play music, not professionally, but they always played around the house. Dad plays piano and guitar and harmonica, and mom plays a bit of guitar and some fiddle. And an older brother lived there when I was quite young, who was also a guitar player, and so there was always somebody playing music around, which was a good example, I'm sure, for me. Yeah.
Now, I think I read that the drums were your first instrument. Is that right?
Yeah, I started when I was in 5th grade, which I guess would put me around 11 years old. I joined the school band as a drummer, and ended up doing that clear through till I was about 19 years old, I think.
How serious did that get? Were there any thoughts harbored of taking up the drums as a career?
No, I started playing the guitar when I was around 13 maybe, and after that I continued to play the drums only because I enjoyed it, and it was a fairly easy class to get through, you know. But the guitar is really what I enjoyed playing more so.
When you did start playing guitar, who were some of the first players that really grabbed your attention?
The one that comes to mind at the time was probably Jimmy Page. I was learning anything I could on the guitar. I mean, my dad got me started, and so he was teaching me what he knew, which by and large was country and western music. So, you know, I remember seeing Roy Clark on TV and liked him, but initially it was Jimmy Page primarily, and sometime shortly after that, though, I ended up finding out about people like Chet Atkins or Mel Travis and even Jim Croce and some of those players. So I was you know, more I was interested in learning anything I could on the guitar, so I didn't necessarily have a guitar hero in so much as I didn't attempt to play like one person in particular. I thought anything I could find that was played on a guitar that I could attempt to figure out was okay by me.
I get the impression you were a pretty keen student of music as you were developing as a musician. Did you actively seek out more and more musical styles and influences?
I did, without stopping to think about it. You know, I wasn't really taking lessons, studying it in any sort of organized fashion. But I was, you know, listening to every guitar player that I knew or heard about or wanted to find out about, and I was fortunately good enough at playing by ear that I could you know, figure out bits and pieces off of these recordings, and you know, every little piece that I figured out helped me understand another piece and another one, and it built on itself, I think, sheerly through the amount of time I was spending with the guitar in my hands.
You've dabbled in many music forms, jazz, folk, blues. What style would you consider to be your first musical love?
I don't know that I have one really. It's and if I do, it's a very general one, and that would have probably to do with the acoustic guitar playing that I first heard played by Jimmy Page, which shortly after that, then I discovered Bert Jansch and Leo Kottke. I mean, that excuse me, that approach to the guitar was the first one that completely enthralled me, and still does. So, you know, when I mean, I still enjoy practicing quite a lot here at home. But when I pick up the guitar and play around for my own enjoyment, it tends to be that sort of thing. You know, fingerstyle guitar picking, instrumental stuff, I suppose. Yeah. Sorry, it's so general, but
yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
You began playing professionally in jazz mode. What was the impetus for you moving away from that after playing it for so long?
Well, the impetus in the end wasn't so much about moving away. It was wanting to understand how I ought to move forward continually, and which is what led me to jazz music in the first place. And that had specifically to do with starting to understand what improvising was and what jazz musicians were doing in that regard. And I spent a good amount of time. It was a roughly 10-year period where I played almost nothing but jazz music in one form or another. Toward the latter part of that time, though, what I found myself wanting to figure out how to do was incorporate more musical elements that I had always enjoyed through the years, and had a hard time understanding how I could fit that in or how it related to this improvising music that I was playing. And so I ended up looking in a place that I hadn't really paid much attention to before, which was listening to players like Skip James and Blind Willie Johnson and Fred McDowell. And I started listening to them not so much because I wanted to try something new. It was that I was looking for a way to continue growing, and at that particular point in time, they offered me that opportunity musically, and I dived headlong into that, paying it pretty strict attention so that I could hopefully understand what was involved with what they were doing traditionally, and anything any way that I could get inside that music. After I did that for a little while, then I was able to at least start determining how I was going to be able to approach music with that as a base that was still improvised, as though I were still playing jazz music. So that's why I say in the end it had more to do with moving forward as a musician than it did with moving away from anything else.
Looking back, do you think you could have got to where you were now musically without having gone through those years of jazz, or do you think that was something you needed to go through first?
No, that was definitely something I needed to go through first. If for no other reason than that, prior to playing jazz music, I wasn't doing any improvising whatsoever. I had no idea what it was or how you did it or why you did it, and having spent the amount of time that I did in it, that gave me the background, and the knowledge and the experience to be able to improvise as sort of a second thought, or it was second nature to me by that time. So I don't know how I would have arrived at what I'm doing now without having gone through that experience.
Sure. Now, your first recording was for a small independent label. How did that one come about?
Well, before that, I was playing locally here. I live right near Portland, Oregon, and I started my solo act, if you will, about 2 years before that first CD came out, and I was taking every gig I could get my hands on, coffee shops and cafes and restaurants and bars and every place that had live music or looked like it could potentially have live music I was trying to get into. And eventually the guy that runs Burnside Records, the label that first CD came out on, he started hearing about me, and evidently had heard more than one person tell him he ought to come listen to what I'm doing. So eventually he did, and right short after that, I think maybe within the same week that he finally came out and saw me, he called me and wanted me to come down and talk to him about the possibility of doing a record, and that's really all that was involved with that first one.
Did you feel pretty well prepared for the recording experience after having years of live work behind you?
No, I wasn't. The situation didn't make me, nervous or anything. But I know that I did go in having convinced myself that I was only playing another gig. I didn't want to think too much about sitting in a studio and recording and trying not to mess up and all those sorts of things. So I remember deciding that how I needed to approach it was just go in there and close my eyes and act as though I were in a cafe, because I knew that I was going to record it live. In other words, I wasn't going to overdub the vocals or punch in tracks or anything. I was going to have to sing and play from start to finish, as though it were a live setting. So I just followed that through mentally, and it worked out, I think.
You're with Rykodisc now. How have you found them to deal with? Are they pretty understanding of and pretty much open to let you go in the musical direction you want to go?
They have so far. Yeah, they've been great that way. Very fortunate for me to be with them, because as a label, from the business side alone, they're very good. They've got a great staff of people, and they can certainly get the record out and introduce musicians to press and all that, and they've been great that way. But in relation to dealing with their artists creatively, I feel like it's been a great situation. I haven't had any struggle at all with it. Sometimes during the recording process, I'll talk to them about ideas I have or questions I have, and they are certainly willing to offer up their thoughts or opinions when asked for. But they've let me pretty much do whatever it is I felt like needed to be done.
I believe in the beginning you were a little bit tentative about stepping up and singing.
Yeah, that was something that took quite a while for me to get comfortable with. I had played music so long up to the point at which I decided I needed to start singing that playing music in front of people wasn't something that bothered me at all. But for whatever reason, when I decided I wanted to try singing, it was very frightening for me. It took hundreds and hundreds of gigs before I was able to stop thinking about it so much and let the vocals stand up there on their own. At this point, I'm very relaxed and comfortable about it. I mean, I enjoy it immensely, and I'm extremely glad that I went through that period of being so nervous about it, because now I can't imagine not singing. It has become such a integral part for me as a performer, I suppose, that I'm very glad that it's something that I'm doing now.
So looking back, it was probably just the thought of it more than anything else that was getting to you, do you think?
Yeah, it certainly was.
Yeah.
I would think, I didn't have anybody telling me to stop, so it was probably okay, but it was mentally a very hard hurdle to jump over.
Now, I'm sure this is a commonly asked question to you, but the reason you opted to play with guitar on lap, is that purely a comfort thing?
Comfort had a lot to do with it. I also liked the tone. I liked the fact that the sound was coming up from the guitar into my face instead of away. But when you play slide guitar lap style, you have to raise the strings up off the fingerboard, and that tightens them up a little bit. And then you use a solid metal bar for slide, and it gives the guitar a very rich tone. And that was something that I responded to as well. When I was attempting to play slide guitar at all, I experimented with the lap style and also the bottleneck style. And I never got to the point playing bottleneck where it felt natural to me, whereas lap style, it was very shortly after I started with it that it seemed like it made sense and felt comfortable, and like I said, that the sound I thought was good as well, so I decided to stay with that approach.
Now, you mentioned Fred McDowell earlier, and I've read elsewhere where you consider him a major influence. What was it about his playing that really intrigued you?
Yeah, the two things I think that he was the great example for me, and were his rhythmic approach to the guitar. He plays, in such a way that it sounds very full, and there's a driving sensation about it that sounds like the music is moving forward, and that was one of the things I always liked about jazz, where the music would start and then would move forward through this time and then end, whereas a lot of other music seems to follow kind of a square format where it does one thing and then does another thing and then maybe does the first thing again and then does another thing, and there's no forward motion. But with Fred, you can really hear that train sort of motion, where it's chugging in a forward line. And the other thing that I liked about him, and still do, of course, is that he would take a song that in format was a very simple one. Now, this is kind of a commonality with a lot of those blues players, but he was the first one that really taught me about all this. But he would take a song that had a very simple format and then somehow inject himself into it, and when he would sing a line, or how many times he would sing a line, or how he would sing a line, was completely determined by how he was feeling about it, or how he was reacting to to the lyric, or what the music was doing. It was a free approach to singing that it was very easy for me to identify with, having come again from playing jazz. He gave me the same emotional impact as listening to somebody like Ornette Coleman playing the saxophone. It seemed very spiritual and moving and free and passionate, and that was something I very much wanted to get into the music myself.
Talking about your songwriting, are you in a comfortable routine with your writing now? Is your approach and method a regular one, or does it vary from song to song?
It varies a bit. If I have any sort of routine at all, I tend to write the lyrics before anything else. They're not always written out in completed form, but I have found that if I work with the lyric before I have any music in mind, the lyric stands up better and makes better sense, and it potentially gives it its own life to live, and then I use that as a basis for what the guitar is going to do underneath it, and I always leave room. I don't the lyric is composed at some point in time. The lyric tends to be solid and straightforward. In other words, not improvised, although the melody will be. But what I do with the guitar part underneath it, I only compose up to a certain point. I don't want too many strict and specific things to be doing with on the guitar, that then feels like it locks the song in, and not so that you can't really change it if you want to or need to in each given situation. So I use the lyric as the foundation for the song then, and improvise a guitar part around it, which again it's a typical approach. Jazz players do this all the time. They have a big body of songs that they use, and a lot of times jazz musicians have a collective body of songs that they all know, which is in the hundreds, certainly 400, 500 songs or something. But what they all know is the melody and the chord changes, and that's all that they work with. It ends up being a blueprint for what the music is going to become in any given instant, and so I approach songwriting that same way, and in the end then I approach performing that way. It's just instead of using chord changes to play off of, I tend to use lyric and rhythmic motif to play off of.
Further down the line in your career, where do you see your main focus being? Continuing with your playing, or more so with your writing?
I'm never really sure about that. I can't tell you that if the writing is getting the bulk of the attention these days, and that probably has a lot to do with not being anywhere near prolific with it. It takes me a lot of work to write a song, and I do an intense amount of self-editing along the way, so it's a very drawn-out process, and it demands a lot of attention. It's also a relatively new thing for me. I mean, at this point now, I've been playing guitar almost 30 years, and so I certainly want to continue to improve as a guitar player, learn more things about being a guitar player, but it doesn't seem to require as much at this point as the writing does, because there's more involved with this writing that I don't have 30 years of experience at. So I'm needing to try to balance the playing out with the writing, and so that's why I have to give the writing more time, I think.
Mm-hmm. Now, reviewers and critics love to categorize and label music, and they're very quick to put a blues label on your music. Have you found it hard to try and convince people that there is more to it than just that?
Yeah, in certain ways. My only the only arena I have, it seems to deal with that issue is the stage, and the recording. So it's getting less and less that I'm being pigeonholed as such. I think the longer that I'm around playing, and the more people find out what it is I'm doing, the less inclined they are. I mean, I think two things are happening. Number one, the blues writers that have been following this thing are still fascinated by it, but are starting to say, there's more to it than blues. I don't know necessarily what it is, but this and that. But the other thing that's happening is non-blues writers are starting to come over, and I mean, like the people that I write about, Leo Kottke or other folk artists or something, are coming around to without even starting to say this is blues music. They're saying this is a music of one sort or another. So I think the music is certainly becoming more accepted for what it is, rather than the box. I mean, initially it made more sense when that first CD came out. I think it was far more in line with what somebody today might be doing with country blues music. But as the records have come by, I've changed and developed during the periods between each one, and so I try to represent that in live performance, and both the audience and the press are, by and large, I think, understanding what it is that I'm trying to do.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Outside of the States, where would your strongest markets be?
Well, I suppose this. I mean, I play all over the States, and from one gig to another, it doesn't seem any different. I certainly don't get any different audience reaction or any of that. As far as areas where I work more than others, the last couple of years I've spent more time in the Northeast part of the States, in New York, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, up around in there. But it's hard to determine why that is. There's a lot of work up there. I mean, there are a lot of clubs and a lot of people, so there's potentially good audiences in a lot of places up there that are only sometimes 80 or 90 miles apart. When you get down to play like Texas or something, guaranteed you're going to drive 300 miles before you get to your next gig, and it's a little different there. But in terms of audience and stuff, it's very uniform what the reaction tends to be. And again, I think that again, having played so many gigs and trying to represent myself honestly, I think that the groundwork has been laid for the audience that shows up understanding what they're going to get. For instance, you would think maybe playing somewhere like Alabama or Mississippi or something that it would be a whole different experience from playing in Maine, but it really isn't, because the audience that comes out is not 90% probably familiar with, or at least 75% familiar with me and what I do. So I think I've gone past the point where people are experimenting in coming out to see who I am. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like I don't, I can play a gig in Mississippi and play everything off of Shine and Mr. Zen, and everybody walks away happy because they weren't there expecting me to play the book of Robert Johnson songs.
What about what about internationally? What areas are strong for you?
Let's see. France is real good. The United Kingdom and Ireland have been great. I've played. Last December I was in Japan for the first time, and that went amazingly well. So, and a handful of other countries in Europe. And again, it seems very uniform. If you were talking to the record label, they could tell you where the record sells more than others. Because for instance, I know that France and the UK are the big ones in Europe, of course. But again, from the performer point of view, it's very uniform, and I mean that in a good way. I mean that strikes me as a good thing. That many people are fans of acoustic music and come out to see the shows and all that stuff.
For sure. And just finally, before we wind up, any thoughts in mind already of the musical direction for the next record?
That I'm not too sure about. I'm setting aside some time in November. I've got November and December off at this point, and I was hopefully going to record during that time, but I haven't been able to figure out what I want to do with it yet. So I'm not too sure. I like the idea at this point of maybe using other musicians on the record. I'm thinking more and more that three solo records might be enough for a little while. Might be time to experiment with some other sounds on there. But I don't really know for sure. What should I do?
Actually, getting a little band together might be a nice thing. Yeah,
yeah, I don't know yet. It's always been really hard for me to determine what I wanted to do next, you know, and it still seems to be that way. So I just really don't know.
Well, we're sure it'll be wonderful, whatever it is.
I hope so.
Okay, Kelly Joe, thanks for your time. It's been a treat speaking with you.
Yeah, you're very welcome, and thank you.
Best of luck with the next record, whatever it may be, and hopefully we'll get to see you down our way again in the near future.
Yeah, I'd like that too.
We'd love to see you.
Great. All
okay,
right.
thanks for your time.
You're welcome.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.